It's the All Elite Wrestling Draft, trying to figure out the All Elite Wrestling roster here on the Squared Circle Psychobabble. My name is Michael Valenti. This is Ralph Valenti. So what we're going to do is we're going to name 10 potential wrestlers that could end up at All Elite Wrestling outside of Cody Rhodes, the Young Bucks, Hangman Page, Marty Scurll, and Kenny Omega, who I guess we can assume would be in All Elite Wrestling. Now, these are all people whose contracts are either ending in 2019, those rumored to be having future endeavors by WWE and could go to All Elite Wrestling, some that are rumored to be going to All Elite Wrestling, and a couple other wild cards in there. So if you want to fast forward to some of those wrestlers, the timestamps will be in the description. And of course, feel free to comment below. Give us a like on this video if you think any of the wrestlers will be in All Elite Wrestling. And share, subscribe, and review on your favorite podcast provider as we're trying to get to 1,000 YouTube subscribers before the Royal Rumble. So, Ralph, let's start it off. We'll start with the most recent WWE champion before Daniel Bryan, and that is AJ Styles, a phenomenal one who his contract is extended until after WrestleMania. We don't know if he's going to re-sign with WWE. It looks like he will, but you never know. He is a former member of the Bullet Club, a former leader of the Bullet Club, just like the Young Bucks, Cody, Omega, and all them. So there are the Bullet Club ties there. So do you think AJ Styles will end up in All Elite Wrestling by 2020?
So I don't think he's one of the individuals that if All Elite Wrestling actually ends up happening, I can't see him being somebody that is actually on their roster by 2020. For the simple fact that you have to, first of all, you have to have some type of money to put up. And not that they won't have that, but I don't know if they'll necessarily be established to the point where they can really draw a big name like that. Because the easiest thing Vince will be able to do is pay some of these guys large amounts of money, sign them to big contracts in order to keep them away from any type of competition. Not only that, but AJ Styles has always been very vocal about how long and how hard he's worked to get to the WWE. At the end of the day, Vince McMahon's going to pay him because he's a draw. He's very popular in the WWE. They use him. They put him in more prominent roles than a lot of the other wrestlers. So I can't see him leaving the WWE anytime soon.
I also will agree. I don't think he will end up in All Elite Wrestling. I do think he'll re-sign with WWE, especially what we've been seeing in the last couple of weeks on SmackDown with Vince basically, whether you want to call it ripping off the Elite and being the Elite or not. But you also have that. And then on this New Year's Day episode of SmackDown, AJ Styles becomes the #1 contender for the WWE Championship in a rematch against Daniel Bryan at Royal Rumble. So they definitely are still keeping him in major storylines. Usually when someone's about to go, they kind of bury them or bring them down lower in the card. I don't see that with AJ Styles, so I think he stays.
Yep.
Now, these next two, one of them, we know for sure his contract ends in 2019. The other one, I'm not sure, but they are recently rumored to be going to All Elite Wrestling.
Speculated. Rumored is a strong word because this is all, there's no spoilers in any of this. This is essentially for fun. I think a lot of the internet wrestling community kind of gets ahead of themselves. They read one thing, they read too much into certain things. So there's no spoilers in any of this. This is all for fun.
That's true. So I'll say speculated then. One of them is Shinsuke Nakamura, and the other one is Dolph Ziggler. So we'll start with Shinsuke Nakamura, who we know his contract ends at the end of 2018, going into 2019. Right. He just dropped the U.S. title to Rusev. He has really been irrelevant for the entire 2018 year after WrestleMania and his feud with AJ Styles. Yes, he became the U.S. champion, but did nothing with the belt.
Yeah.
So I think it makes sense that he would be frustrated in his direction in WWE. Dave Meltzer has said that he does not want to go back to Japan. But if All Elite Wrestling is happening, he could stay in the States, maybe have a much lighter work schedule, maybe be booked properly. Who knows? Do you think Shinsuke Nakamura will be in All Elite Wrestling?
I actually do think he will be. Based on the way he has been kind of booked, and, there's all things that we can only speculate about. We don't really know what goes on behind the scenes. But just based on some of the things that have happened, like you pointed out, him dropping the U.S. title, him really not catching on kind of as a face when he was first brought over from NXT, I think it was more or less just expected that he was going to become a really big star. And not that he wasn't successful. There's many reasons why he wasn't successful. He did win the Royal Rumble, but outside of that, he hasn't really had tremendous success like I would have expected, or maybe some other people would have expected. I do get the sense that he's probably a little bit frustrated with his current position in the company, and that's just strictly based on some of the things that I have read on the internet. But I think that it is likely that he could be one of the people that does leave the WWE for All Elite Pro Wrestling.
It's going to be interesting. I do think he is frustrated. I do think he has not been booked right. I also understand it because of the language barrier. Vince does not like guys who can't talk. They have to be able to talk to get put into those main event pictures. And I think the fact that AJ versus Shinsuke at WrestleMania did not deliver the way people wanted it to. They were expecting the Wrestle Kingdom match. They did not get the Wrestle Kingdom match. So I think because of that backlash, Vince was like, well, it's Shinsuke's fault. AJ has been drawing, Shinsuke has not. So maybe they do go their separate ways, and if All Elite Wrestling's happening, I do say Shinsuke Nakamura does make the move over. Shinsuke Nakamura will go to All Elite Wrestling. Now let's move over to the other one that people are speculating recently, and that is Dolph Ziggler, who actually had somewhat of a resurgence in 2018. He won the U.S. title late in 2017, then dropped it the next night. He forfeited, basically. Disappeared until the Royal Rumble, where he entered at number 30. I thought it was going to be a much bigger moment, actually leading to winning the Royal Rumble at number 30, but he gets eliminated in 4 minutes. Doesn't really do anything until Drew McIntyre comes. They win the tag team titles. Dolph Ziggler wins the IC title. Has been in the main event picture for most of 2018 with the Dogs of War stuff. So he had a decent 2018. Not many that people would, bank on, but he was a lot more relevant than the last few years.
Yeah.
But it's probably not where Dolph Ziggler wants to be and where Dolph Ziggler really deserves to be. He's a good talker. He's a good in-ring wrestler. He should be in the main event. I don't understand why he never got that push. Yes, he won the Money in the Bank all those years, had one of the best cash-ins ever. Then he got concussed, and that might have led to all this. So, do I think he will go to All Elite Wrestling? I'm going to say no. He does not. But if he leaves WWE, I think it's that he leaves wrestling forever and goes to comedy.
100%. I agree 100%. I see, he's been in WWE for a long time. He's done just about everything you can do. Now, has there been streaks where he's probably been frustrated because of his position and because he's gotten hurt and all of that other stuff? Of course, I'm sure everybody has moments like that in their career, or somebody always gets hurt at some point or feels like they should be in the main event and they're not in the main event. But I can't see him, no disrespect to any of the guys that would be creating All Elite, but it would be a step backwards, at least for right out of the get-go, unless they really start drawing right out of the gate and start, beating, if they were to have their own show, beating WWE in the ratings. They're not going to do that right out of the gate. So it kind of would be a step backwards for somebody like Dolph Ziggler. So I do think if he were to leave the WWE, he'd probably take some time off. Where he winds up after that, I'm not sure, but I can't see him going to All Elite Wrestling.
All right, that's fair enough. Like I said, if he leaves WWE, I think that's it. He's done with wrestling. He's going to just go into comedy. Now, our next two, these have been speculated because members of the Elite themselves have tweeted and interacted on Twitter with these two. The first one is the Revival, who have been very frustrated with their position in WWE, have been very
rightfully so. And so have the fans, I think.
Yes, the fans are frustrated with how they've been booked. we are seeing somewhat of a turnaround since this quote-unquote fresh start in WWE. The Revival got a number one contenders match they got the number one contendership for the tag team titles. They lost that match. It was kind of screwy. There will be a rematch the first Raw of 2019. So maybe they're trying to make amends for this. They did have the tag team championship match at SummerSlam, but they lost to the B team. They were victims of Lucha House Party rules. I mean, they looked like such idiots this year, and unrightfully so. I think they are possibly the best tag team in WWE right now. But there's that tweet that the Bucks tweeted out after the first Lucha House Party match, which was one day the Young Bucks and the Revival will have a match together. Obviously, this could be either the Revival are going to All Elite Wrestling or the Young Bucks are going to WWE. But if All Elite Wrestling's happening, you would think it's the other way around. Do the Revival go to All Elite Wrestling? I don't know their contract situation. So I believe if this were to happen, Vince would have to send them to future endeavors. I think at this point, he does not want to do that. He wants to at least keep them there. For what reason, I don't know, because he hates tag teams. Maybe they split up and go on a singles run before he eventually releases one of them or both of them. But I think for 2019, we do not see the Revival out of WWE.
Yeah, I'm going to agree again, just based on the fact that Vince is not just going to let a mass exodus of talent walk away from the WWE and go join another company. I think he's kind of learned his lesson from what happened with WCW back in the day, where some of those bigger names and not that the Rival's a huge name, but there is some relevance. They are in the WWE currently, so them going to like All Elite, there is some attraction there. I can't see this happening because with the WWE, I don't think Vince actually hates tag teams, but
no, he hates tag teams.
Well, I mean, it certainly seems like somebody within the WWE does not like tag teams because of the way they've been booked traditionally, right? They build up the tag team division only to tear it down time and time again. And I could see why that's frustrating for a team like the Revival because they are very talented, and you can kind of look to some of their matches that they had in NXT or even outside of the NXT or the WWE altogether just to see how talented they are. But I don't see them leaving the WWE anytime soon. We'll see what happens, with their current situation going forward. If they're actually pushed the right way, if they're booked the way that people feel like they should be booked, and if it actually catches on, I don't know, but it'll be interesting. So for now, I say no.
All right. Now, the other one was recently interacting on Twitter with Cody Rhodes.
Right.
And I don't know if you saw this on Twitter, but Zack Ryder, I did not know this. Zack Ryder did not have a match on Raw the entire 2018. Now, he was on SmackDown to start the year, but then got moved over in the shakeup. But he wasn't on TV the entire year? Mm-hmm. That is surprising. Now, I know he's kind of been irrelevant in WWE for quite some time. Some fans really love Zack Ryder, maybe because of his YouTube channel way back when he was like one of the first YouTube sensations and got really over because of that.
Yeah.
Now, this is where some of those mouth-breathing basement dwellers like to say that Vince doesn't like people getting over organically. He wants to make sure they're over his way or the highway kind of thing. And Ryder has been buried because of it. Can't we just say, like, maybe he's just not that good?
I do think he's good, and I do think he's certainly charismatic because somebody doesn't become that popular on YouTube by accident.
I understand that.
All that being said, I don't know why the WWE didn't really try to capitalize on his ability to get all those followers and to kind of organically create that movement with, the Long Island IZ show that he had on YouTube. But they didn't. They didn't fully invest in his character. They didn't really push it the way that most people felt like that he should have been pushed. Which brings us to today. I actually do think he would end up going to All Elite Wrestling because of his relationship with Cody. So I think that's something that I can certainly see happening in the future.
Now, Cody understands the possible draw power of Zack Ryder, because in his tweet he said, basically he was saying on a night where The Rock in Madison Square Garden was on Raw, the crowd was chanting, "We want Ryder," in the middle of a Rock segment. Now, if that's not over, I don't know what over is. But then again, this is New York. He's from New York, so you have a lot of hometown fans there supporting a hometown wrestler being from Long Island. So is that just coincidence? Or is that he was that over at that time? It was a mixture of both, I think. I do think he will end up in All Elite Wrestling. I think he will ask for his release. And I don't think Vince sees him as that big of a draw, or else he would put him on TV more.
Right.
He doesn't see him as a draw. So, unfortunately, Vince might agree, part ways, and say, hey, good luck. Go to All Elite Wrestling. I don't think you're going to help them that much, because their draw is going to be with Cody and the Bucks and Kenny and Marty and whoever else is going to be a part of it. Not Zack Ryder. Zack Ryder might get pushed much better than he is in WWE, but at what point does that really matter? Now, another team that has connections with the Bullet Club, another former leader of the Bullet Club, might I add, is Karl Anderson and his tag team partner, Luke Gallows. They were obviously members of the Bullet Club before they came with AJ Styles and Shinsuke Nakamura 3 years ago. Their contracts are up in mid-September, I believe, is when their contracts are up. Still plenty of time for them to actually get built into the tag team division, but again, this is another team that really was irrelevant. We don't know what we're doing with our tag teams in WWE, and this is another, basically SmackDown's version of the Revival. Didn't do much, should have done a lot more, and they're just, why are they there?
Yeah. I think part of the problem with them is no matter what they've tried to do with them, they haven't necessarily caught on. Like, it's great. They were really popular in Japan, but that doesn't always correlate to what the fans are going to like in the United States or the masses, you know? So there's that. And then, you know, like we talked about the fact that, you know, that it's kind of this up and down even flow with what goes on with WWE and the tag teams. So I don't know. They're interesting. I want to see what actually happens with them on SmackDown if they actually try to push them. I think that they could be good. I actually think Karl Anderson could be a really good singles competitor.
He had his moments in New Japan Pro Wrestling.
I think he could be an interesting heel, especially on SmackDown right now. But you know, right now they're going to try and push them as a legitimate tag team. It seems like that, at least.
It's funny, like, you know, they try to build these tag teams and then they take them down and they don't really do much with them and end up splitting up. There were times, like even during the Attitude Era, where tag teams would also compete as singles competitors and they would have multiple titles. Ken Shamrock and the Big Boss Man. Boss Man was the Hardcore Champion and Tag Team Champion. Ken Shamrock was the Intercontinental Champion and Tag Team Champion. It's happened before. Why don't they do it? I feel like they need to do stuff like that more to build that tag team division. But that's just sidetracking there. But going back to this All Elite Wrestling draft, I do think Gallows and Anderson, unless there's some huge change in how the tag team division is booked, they will be there.
Yeah.
Come October. I mean, they're going to need some new guys even throughout. And I mean, we don't even know when All Elite Wrestling is actually going to happen, if it even happens. So, with that, I think Gallows and Anderson will be in All Elite Wrestling come, let's see, it's September. So, it'll be December. So, the latest, late 2019, but they'll be there.
Yeah, and I think these guys, their stock might actually be, they might be one of the few guys whose stock is greater outside of the WWE. Because you look at the success that they had in Japan, you know, they could always go back to Japan if they wanted to, or, you know, go compete in All Elite if it didn't work out in the WWE. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with them.
All right, this next one here, he's not contracted anywhere. He is a freelance wrestler, but he does have ties to Kenny Omega.
Yep.
And he was at All In. He was in the main event with the Young Bucks. He does have a match at Wrestle Kingdom for the Never Openweight Championship against Will Ospreay. I'm talking about Kota Ibushi. Now, as a freelancer, you could come and go as ever you please. You just They call you, you show up, you do your thing, and you're done. Does he stick to that freelancing and be a part of All Elite Wrestling, or does he contract exclusively to All Elite Wrestling, or does he not go there at all? I think he really likes this whole freelancing thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Do what he wants. I mean, he's a very rare commodity like that. He ended up in the Cruiserweight Classic, almost won the thing, would have signed with WWE if he won, he was signing with WWE. He opted not to, so he didn't win. He's probably the hottest free agent in wrestling. I don't see why he wouldn't be a part of All Elite Wrestling. I think a lot of people who watch New Japan Pro Wrestling, a lot of people who saw All In, and people that saw him in the Cruiserweight Classic definitely know him. They know how good he is in the ring. Yeah. He doesn't need to be a great talker because I don't think All Elite Wrestling is going to be about promos as much as WWE is. Plus, if he does his thing with Kenny Omega and they become the Golden Lovers there, Kenny Omega's the talk piece.
Yeah.
It makes perfect sense. I say he's in.
Me too. I agree. But I disagree in the sense that he's the hottest free agent because I think that the hottest free agent in all of wrestling, despite him not wrestling for a long time, and I know he's on the list, is CM Punk.
We'll get to him later.
So, okay.
We'll get to him later. But another guy that his contract will be up in 2019. He was in the All In show, but he's also the Ring of Honor champion right now, and that is Jay Lethal. I know you're not a fan of Jay Lethal and the machismo gimmick, but he is the champion of Ring of Honor. People do love the machismo gimmick.
I'm just
so it might be a draw for All Elite Wrestling. A lot of people outside of WWE that watch Ring of Honor are fans of Jay Lethal. He would be a decent draw, I think. I say he stays with Ring of Honor but does not go to All Elite Wrestling.
I agree. He's certainly the top guy in Ring of Honor right now. I have nothing against him. He's a really good wrestler. I have a hard time buying into the character, and I think if he was to go to another promotion like All Elite, I've seen that character played before in TNA. Now he's doing it, or he's done it again in Ring of Honor. And it hasn't brought huge success. Yeah, it works for him, and people like it, and people get into it, and that's great. But if they're really, truly intending to compete against the WWE, like I keep saying, you're going to need guys that are going to be really big draws. And he's a big draw. He's a big name in the wrestling industry. But at the same time, Black Machismo didn't work in TNA. In terms of, beating WWE in any type of ratings war. It's not working in Ring of Honor in terms of competing against WWE. What makes anybody think it's going to work at All Elite?
Well, here's the thing. We talked about this a couple months ago. Can All Elite Wrestling compete with WWE? And we'll have a link in the description for that video. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put the card up right here above my head right now. A lot of people in the comments pretty much said, you're asking the wrong question. It's not that can All Elite Wrestling compete with WWE. It just needs to be an alternative. They're not targeting WWE fans. They're targeting wrestling fans. So in that regard, in this first year, obviously they're not going to compete with WWE. Maybe in 5 years they will. Jay Lethal can help with that if he's a draw and people are behind him early on. Like I said, I don't think he's going there. I think he's going to stay with Ring of Honor. And, maybe in a couple years, if he, depending on what his re-sign contract's going to be, maybe 2-3 years down the road.
The one thing I will say about that is it's cool to say, okay, well, we're the alternative to WWE. But at the end of the day, if you aren't making money, if you aren't selling tickets, if you aren't selling merchandise, if you're not selling pay-per-views, there is no alternative. So for people to say, oh, well, they're not really competing against WWE, of course they are. There's one king of the mountain right now, and that's WWE. In order to win any type of, to get a piece of the pie, at least to remain relevant, you need to make money, which means you have to either attract new fans or you need to attract fans away from WWE. That's the bottom line. That's the truth. If you're not making money, you're not competing with anybody, and there is no alternative.
That's true. Well, we'll see. Two guys, we know their contracts actually are through 2019, but it is with Lucha Underground, and we don't know if Lucha Underground will actually be a thing by the end of 2019, but the biggest names in Lucha Underground, and they do a lot of stuff in Impact Wrestling and Major League Wrestling, and they're all over the world. It's the Lucha Brothers, Pentagon Jr. and Rey Fenix.
Right.
I love these guys. I thought Pentagon versus Kenny Omega was the second best match at All In. A lot of people thought it was the best match at All In. And this guy, he's one of those that needs to stay away from WWE as far away as possible because of his moveset would get very limited in WWE, especially the package pile driver onto the apron.
Yeah.
That would never fly in WWE. Never, ever, ever. And Rey Fenix, another guy who does a lot of good work. And of course, if you get one, you get both, I believe. But it all depends on if Lucha Underground is going to be a thing. And if they, end up having a new season and the El Rey network and everyone that airs them decide to go through with it. I do think the Lucha Underground will stay. They will have season 5 and they will not be able to jump from Lucha Underground to All Elite Wrestling unless there is that allowance like they have right now with Impact Wrestling. See, that's the thing. Is All Elite Wrestling going to be borrowing from other companies to build their roster?
Right, yeah.
I think they have to in the beginning, and these guys will be the ones they try to borrow the most. But what does that mean for Impact? I know All Elite Wrestling was attempted to be sold Impact Wrestling, and they didn't want it.
They turned it down.
They turned it down. So I think that might block the Lucha Brothers from going there, and I'm saying no. They will not be in All Elite Wrestling in 2019.
I don't think so. I don't think, but in 2019, eventually down the road, I think they will end up working something out where I don't know if it's going to be an exclusive deal, but maybe some interpromotion. I think at some point we could see the both of them.
All right, we'll save the best for last, Ralph.
Yep.
The hottest free agent in wrestling, although I don't know if you want to call him a free agent because he's retired. He has been retired since Royal Rumble 2014.
Yeah.
CM Punk. Does he make a return into wrestling and join All Elite Wrestling to give the biggest middle finger to Vince McMahon?
Well, again, if he's going to give the biggest middle finger to Vince McMahon, then he's going to have to sign with them, be a big draw, and lead them to some type of ratings war. I don't see that happening. I think he's comfortable in his position right now. I think he's still kind of, based on all the interviews I've read or seen him do recently, it seems like he still has some sour grapes about the wrestling industry and business overall based on his previous experience in WWE. Who knows, though? I mean, I think he just got offered a job doing commentary for UFC, so he's going to be doing that. I don't see this happening anytime soon.
It's very interesting. I know there's a lot of people that want this to happen.
Mm-hmm.
I actually am one of those people. I would love to see this happen.
I would love to see it.
Because if this happens, Vince, I think, would push that panic button and be like, oh my God, what do we got to do? This is a guy that people chant for in WWE shows 4 years later.
Yep.
They were chanting CM Punk chants during Apollo Crews versus Dean Ambrose in the New Year's Eve episode of Monday Night Raw. It's been 4 years, guys. Almost 5 years. And whether it's Chicago, New York, Tampa, Los Angeles,
Philly,
Toronto, Philly, they all chant CM Punk. Every Royal Rumble since 2014, CM Punk is coming back as a surprise entrant. Every WrestleMania, CM Punk is coming back for a big match.
Yeah.
All In, which was in Chicago. CM Punk is going to be a surprise. They're keeping him a surprise. People want this to happen in such a bad way that there have been rumors and speculations for 4 years about this return. CM Punk, I think, eventually wants to come back to wrestling. I understand he's, 42, 43 years old right now? In his early 40s. I at least know that. But AJ Styles is 41. John Cena's 43. Brock Lesnar's 43. Why can't he come back? Even if it's a short 1 year thing, just to get people talking about All Elite Wrestling outside of the Elite.
Yeah.
Because the Elite needs somebody like that to get that WWE fans to watch.
Yeah.
They need it, CM Punk. And I think it's happening.
We'll see. I mean, it's going to depend largely on where he's at with his contracts with UFC, if he does continue to do that commentary deal that they offered him. If he wants to get back into wrestling, I think it's much more likely we see him in a promotion like this rather than make a return to WWE anytime soon.
Mm-hmm.
So can it happen? Of course it can. I don't think it's going to happen for quite some time, but we can agree to disagree on him.
All right. Let us know what you think in the comments. Do any of these 10 wrestlers or tag teams end up in All Elite Wrestling? Like the video if you think any of the 10 that we mentioned will be there. Subscribe, hit that bell for notifications as we're trying to get to 1,000 YouTube subscribers before the Royal Rumble. And if you're listening on your favorite podcast provider, make sure you subscribe, review, share, so that more people listen to the Squared Circle Psychobabble. For Ralph Valenti, my name is Michael Valenti, and thank you for listening to the Squared Circle Psychobabble.